very last night of all, we knew we'd have to leave. So we had dinner in the wardroom, and nobody turned a hair. And they said, "Come on, Jim, where we go?" And we just slided out and joined the boat. Of course, we motored a bit out into the... We were picked up by a trawler, yes, who towed us out. I was working with line, of course, all the time. That's my job, really, is to help him. Some of the time just steering. I was on the wheel a lot of the time, or taking bearings. We had to go across the minefield. That was what we were all talking very much about. That was our own minefield. So we got across the minefield, and then as soon as we got something, which should have been at about dawn, we went down on periscope depth, of course, then, and motored down towards the beaches. Then we'd established where we were, and then he started motoring over to our position. So then we bottomed. Of course, you know what you do, which is difficult because we had to do it in the daytime, and that was very tricky. So we didn't dare to surface to come up to periscope decks really, except we came to this first business where we could just split. And my job was to jump out of the thing, find the hatch quickly, and drop the anchor. You see. We were then, of course, in this incredibly dangerous position for a submarine, of all things, because we were anchored and sitting on the bottom. And, you know, if anybody had seen us, you obviously have been very defensive to see that you couldn't move, really. Instead of using a little boat, my part was all my equipment, which would have gone on a little dinghy, was on the stern of the boat of the aircraft, and the bow had the big lights and flags. So, yes, we surfaced and waited, and complete silence. And this is almost, because we were all known by then. I mean, the other boat was, 30 miles away. Well, the first thing, of course, was the big bombers, who came up from one end, strafed the beaches right up and down and up and down and up and down and down, bombs all the time. And we were all saying bingo, something. And then they disappeared off. And then just absolute silence again. It's absolute silence. We were thinking, come on, what's happening? We still didn't really know what the hell was this all about. We knew it was sort of invasion. What, I really didn't know much more. That was the secrecy, such it was, and good thing too, wasn't it? Secrecy. And then, of course, the next was the battleships. And they opened up from 15 miles with the 16-inch guns, and the shells came whistling over us. They whistled, they literally did. Then there was another silence, you see. We thought, well, what the hell is going on, And then of course, suddenly, and this is true, that the mist sort of cleared, because by then it was, 4 o'clock or something, 6 o'clock. And then we thought, just look at it. I mean, it was just boats, ships. I mean, that was quite incredible. We were all of us were standing on the top of the boat, of course. She was anchored. So we were just seeing like that. The DD tanks came past, and we were very pleased by then to know, line must have known by then that this is the point critical. Most of ours didn't, in fact, even drive off. They kept them right into the beach. But anyway, they passed us, and we waved, And then, an MTB came over to us and said, "Gone back to the logs." It was the control ship, HMS Logs. Well, then we had got all the equipment aboard, and we managed to put up a lovely white ensign up on the stern, because we thought, and we followed this MTB, and he led us to the large HMS Logs and went up alongside. And Line went straight aboard to report, because he was in charge of the operation, and stayed aboard. And then we were invited to, all the rest of the crew, to go aboard the Logs, which we did. And he gave us a bath. He was an admiral. He had an admiral's cabin, captain's cabin. He had a bath, and so we all had a soak.
Well, Jim, as we come to the end of the interview, what do you think are some of the qualities required of a specialist soldier or sailor, like a copist and a commando? What is it that you think makes a person effective in that role?
I think all the cop people were exciting people. They were fun. after we knew each other better, we did, let's face it, go out and drink beer and etc. together, and they were all good, sociable people. We were all sociable. I think you've got to be, yes, you've got to be able to work together, haven't you? Perhaps that's one of the things. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, because they were so mixed, and we were all such a mixed bunch.
Heroes are generally unassuming and often multi-skilled, but few of us would expect church organist, chorister, keen allotment holder and cyclist Jim Booth to have had such a colourful wartime record. When he came back to his old haunt here at Hayling Island Sailing Club last spring, Jim told me about his mission to the Gold Beach landing site in 1944, crewing an X-craft midget submarine. Apparently, that mission went so well that on their return, the X-craft crews were promptly posted to the Far East. We were extremely fortunate to obtain this BBC footage of a D-Day piece by the late Jill Dando, which says so much about the courageous exploits of the extraordinary men of Combined Operations Pilotage Parties.
Submarines were underwater, underhand, and damned un-English. No occupation for a gentleman. Such was the view of submariners in the early part of this century. It was thought sneaky, creeping around beneath the water, out of view of conventional craft. The Jolly Roger, flown by submariners, gives us some idea, though, of the pride they had in their role and that reputation. On the evening of Friday, the 2nd of June, 1944, 2 X-craft like this one set out to uphold the very best of submarining traditions. Their job was to creep undetected to the Normandy coast, and they were then to sit on the bottom until dawn on D-Day. Their job then was to run up lights on masts to guide the Allied fleet in. George Honour was a lieutenant commanding one of the subs at the time. George, what were conditions like being underwater for so long?
Well, by the time D-Day came, we'd been submerged for nearly 4 days, and it was getting very murky, and the oxygen supply could have been running out, as we had no knowledge of how long our supply would last. We were a little bit worried, too, because when we set off on the operation, we were called Operation Gambit, and we looked this up in the local library, and we found it was the move you throw away before a big move in chess, which didn't exactly excite us.
So, Jim, what was your role in the operation?
Well, I was in an organisation called COP, Combined Operations Pilotage and Reconnaissance Party, and my team's job, embarked in the X-23, was to arrive off the Sword Beach, in fact 48 hours before, fix our position extremely accurately, which we had to do, and then produce a marker lamp which could be shone to seaward at the actual time of the invasion, so the leading craft would then see the line to come in on, and they wouldn't go farther to the east, which would have been extremely dangerous for them.
So when did you hear that D-Day itself was actually going to go ahead?
We heard by wireless transmission on Monday night, during the hours of darkness. We only surfaced for a very short time, stuck our aerial up, got the message and went down again, and waited a further 24 hours.
And what were conditions like then?
The weather was still terribly bad. Wave of break over the craft, we had to pump out all the time, and we were very surprised that the invasion was then on, but very relieved, as our oxygen may well have been running out.
Yes, what were conditions like inside for 5 men?
Well, we were all right as long as the oxygen supply kept up. Of course, it was murky, damp, and otherwise very horrible, and there was a feeling of rather like a couple of stiff gins.
It's only when you climb in one of these craft for yourself, you see how cramped conditions must have been for 5 men in here altogether. This is the control room. If they wanted to grab a couple of hours sleep, then they could go there. That's the battery room back there.
I don't remember ever feeling it was dangerous, but then that is what happens in war. I think servicemen never believe that anything can happen to them.
That's Jim Booth on the bows of X-23 on D-Day.
We arrived off the French beaches just after dawn on Sunday, and we remained there until after the landings on the morning of the Tuesday, June the 6th. But we must add the time we took to cross, submerge from Gosport to Weestrum, which was from about 6 o'clock on the Friday night till AM on the Sunday morning. As soon as the DD tanks had been launched, we had completed our task, so we cut the anchor rope. We were too exhausted to pull up the anchor. And then we had to rendezvous with our escorting trawler, which was called En Avant. And then we changed over crews. The crew that had been off the beaches transferred to the trawler, and the passage crew took over the X-craft. When we got back to off Gosport, we transferred back into our X-craft, and we steamed into HMS Dolphin, the submarine base, with the crew that had originally left, and the base turned out to greet us back.
A memorial in Hampshire has today been dedicated to the men who served with one of the most secret commando units from the Second World War. The Combined Operations Pilotage Parties, or COP for short, trained on Hayland Island. The 200-strong unit played key roles in the gathering of intelligence ahead of the D-Day landings, its biggest operation.
I think young men thought it was wonderfully exciting. I did, yes, gosh, you know, I mean, it really was exciting. And they were beautiful boats, and they had everything there. And it was a big operation, we knew that. So taking part, it was fantastic.
They provided the vital intelligence, and also on the day the guiding hand that got the Allied invasion force ashore safely. So absolutely vital.